The horizon burned gold as the first light of morning touched the edge of the sea. The air was calm, carrying the faint scent of salt and freedom. The world seemed to hold its breath as the Liberty Drift 2026 began to move. Its sleek white hull cut through the water like poetry in motion, the sound of the waves blending with the hum of its silent engines. The city behind it faded into mist, replaced by endless blue. It wasn't just a departure, it was liberation. The captain stood alone at the helm, his hand steady on the wheel, eyes focused on the horizon. He didn't need maps anymore, the sea was his compass. The sunlight reflected on his sunglasses as he whispered, "Today, we drift free." On the upper deck, a woman watched the seagulls trace circles in the glowing sky. Her hair swayed in the morning wind, her reflection caught in the glass railing, half dream, half memory. Inside, the interior shimmered with modern grace. Marble floors, golden fixtures, gentle piano music echoing softly through the halls. Coffee steam curled lazily above a glass cup as sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, painting the room in warm gold. The world outside was distant now. No deadlines, no noise, only the rhythm of waves and the soft heartbeat of the boat beneath their feet. By noon, the Liberty Drift had reached open waters. The captain slowed the engines, letting the ocean cradle the vessel. He looked over to her, the way she leaned on the railing, her eyes lost in the horizon. "It feels like the world is asleep," she said quietly. He smiled. "No, love, the world is just waking up." The sunlight glinted across the sea like shattered diamonds, reflecting on their faces, turning everything into living art. As the day grew, they sat together beneath a white canopy on the deck. The wind teased the edges of her silk dress, and the sea whispered stories that only the free could understand. She poured champagne into two slender glasses, the bubbles catching sunlight like tiny stars. They laughed at nothing in particular, at the joy of being unbound. There was no destination, only the drift. Later, as the sun began to fall, the sea turned molten orange. The world was awash with fire and calm. He stood behind her, his arms wrapped gently around her shoulders. The sound of the waves slowed, almost like the ocean itself was breathing with them. "If this moment lasted forever," she said, "would you still chase tomorrow?" He answered, "If tomorrow means losing this, then I'd rather stay adrift forever." Their words disappeared into the wind, but their silence said more than time could hold. Night came softly. The Liberty Drift glowed with blue light, floating like a star on the water. Above them, the universe unfolded, millions of stars scattered across a black velvet sky. She rested her head on his chest as they lay on the deck, wrapped in the sound of the sea. The moonlight reflected on the water, turning the waves into silver glass. For a while, nothing existed except the rhythm of hearts and the whisper of the tide. Fog rolled in the next morning. The boat drifted through golden mist, and the world looked unreal. The line between dream and reality blurred as beams of sunlight cut through the haze. It was like sailing through memory itself, soft, distant, and alive. He walked through the fog toward her silhouette, her figure glowing faintly in the diffused light. "We could be anywhere," she said. He smiled. "We already are. But the sea, like life, never stays gentle forever." That evening, the horizon darkened. Wind gathered. The waves began to rise. Clouds churned like mountains above them, and lightning tore across the sky. Rain fell in sheets, drumming against the deck. He tightened his grip on the wheel while she held the railing, hair-soaked, eyes fearless. The storm roared, testing the strength of their bond and the will of the Liberty Drift. It wasn't chaos, it was life, raw and unstoppable. Hours later, the storm passed. The sea turned still again, as if nothing had happened. Water droplets clung to the railings, glimmering in the returning light. A faint rainbow curved across the horizon. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth touch her face. He stepped beside her, their fingers brushing. The silence after the storm was sacred. In that quiet, they didn't speak. They didn't need to. The sea had already spoken for them. Days passed. The Liberty Drift found its rhythm between sunrise and sunset, its decks alive with laughter and peace. They approached a hidden island. Crystal waters, white sands, palm trees swaying like slow dancers. The anchor fell gently, and they walked barefoot onto untouched sand. The world felt reborn. She turned to him, smiling. "It's paradise." He shook his head. "Paradise is wherever you stand." That night, they held a small celebration. Lanterns glowed on the deck, their reflections shimmering on the waves. Music floated in the air, soft, rhythmic, alive. The scent of tropical flowers mingled with salt and champagne. Around them, friends laughed, couples danced, and time seemed to melt away. In that glowing blur, he took her hand and whispered, "Remember this night." She smiled. "I will, even when the sea forgets us." Another dawn, another drift. The captain stood on deck with a quiet smile, the horizon wide and endless. He remembered every moment. The storm, the silence, the laughter, the glow of her eyes when the world was golden. Life wasn't measured in miles, he thought, but in the breaths between waves. The boat wasn't a vessel anymore, it was memory made real, floating through time. One afternoon, he found her sitting near the edge of the deck, her feet dangling just above the surface. She looked into the water, watching her reflection dance with light. "Do you ever think," she said softly, "that the sea remembers us?" He looked at her, then at the horizon. "The sea remembers everything. It just keeps it hidden." She smiled, but her eyes carried the weight of something unspoken. The nights grew longer, the stars brighter, the world quieter. The Liberty Drift 2026 glided through endless blue, carrying more than two souls, it carried dreams. The captain often sat in silence, watching the stars reflected on the calm water. It felt as if the boat was floating between two skies, one above and one below, both infinite and full of secrets. One morning, she left a letter on the deck, a small folded piece of paper resting beside his coffee cup. The ink was smudged slightly from sea air. "If we ever drift apart," it read, "just know I found freedom in the way you looked at the ocean." He closed his eyes and smiled, the wind brushing against his face like her touch. Years seemed to pass in the rhythm of waves. The Liberty Drift became more than a boat, it became legend. Some said it still sailed beyond the known horizon, chasing sunsets that never ended. Others swore they saw its light at midnight, glowing faintly beneath the stars. But the truth was simpler. Freedom doesn't end when you stop sailing. It lives in the hearts of those who dared to drift. In the final evening of its journey, the sea was calm again. The sunset burned red and gold, stretching across the horizon like fire melting into water. The boat moved slowly, gracefully, as if saying farewell. A letter slipped from the deck, caught in a breeze, and floated onto the waves. The camera followed it as it drifted farther away, the reflection of Liberty Drift 2026 fading in the glow. The sound of the ocean grew softer, then vanished. There was no grand ending, only peace. The world turned golden one last time, and the horizon swallowed the light. Somewhere beyond sight, the Liberty Drift 2026 kept moving, eternal and untamed, its name whispering through the tides. Freedom was never a destination. It was the drift itself.